Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 552 of the Dead Robot Society. I'm Terry Mixon. Joining me, Paul E. Cooley. How are you doing, man? Is your computer giving you a stroke? What's going on over there?
I am having the worst fucking time. I don't know what's going on. I think my Mac Mini is dying or something else is going radically wrong. Either way, it's bad.
It's time to switch to Windows.
Fuck no. So currently we are recording this episode on my Linux machine using OBS and Discord. We'll have to see how this turns out. I have no idea if this is even, if all this shit we're saying is even going to make it out.
Now you realize that last week when we recorded the episode, we did it in Hangouts. So the video intro is going to look different than the entire episode.
And you know what? That's okay. I have no problem with that.
Okay, fine.
I have no problem with that whatsoever. None. See, now that we have this split screen thing, people can see our reactions to one another a little easier, for better or worse.
I think that's true. You're going to have to stop picking your nose now, though.
You know, that's the one problem. There's like, that's not true. I can go over here and just turn my damn camera off like that.
Well, I suppose that's true.
And then I can, have a little e-cigarette time. No?
Whatever works. Whatever works for you, buddy. So, other than the last 2 days of computer madness, how's your writing been going?
Editing Trident. Wrote some more stuff on that as well. Found some little technical problems I need to deal with in the first 200 pages. Things I forgot that I put in that I now either need to yank or explore.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah, I think I'll be yanking a few of them because it's just...
It's when you find a grenade going, where did this come from?
It's not quite that bad, but it's almost as bad. It's like I had forgotten that one thing was one half had power and the other half didn't have power, and I just vacillated between there being power and not. It was kind of confusing. So
it's like when you go back and you edit something out and you miss a reference to it.
Right.
And so you're going through the story, and then he found the big shotgun that he had sitting on the table. Where did this thing come from? Where did this big old shotgun come from?
Or why are the lights suddenly off and nobody being concerned that the lights just went off?
Lights on, lights off. Yeah. It's like some TV shows where the continuity is off and the people just keep changing clothes or something. Oh. Like their wristwatch appears and disappears.
Or it moves from the right hand to the left hand.
Or the guy's eye patch changes eyes.
Yeah, wasn't it? It was Men in Tights, right? It was the guy playing the prince always had this big
mole
that kept moving around his face.
Yes.
Because they were making fun of something that happened in the original Robin Hood movie where they missed a continuity piece. But yeah, the mole just kept moving around. Sir, your totally mole. I have a mole.
It reminds me of Mel Brooks. My God, why didn't somebody tell me I had an ass like this? No, it wasn't Mel Brooks. It was I don't remember.
No,
it was in Spaceball. Was it Mel Brooks that did that?
It was Mel Brooks. He ended up. I don't remember what. It had to be Spaceballs.
Was it in Spaceballs? It had to be Spaceballs.
Where he ended up...
He's looking at his ass because his head's on backwards.
His head's on backwards.
My God, why didn't somebody tell me I had a huge ass?
Yeah, exactly. It's like that. So, apart from that, trying to get everything else going, I started making inroads on getting the subscription service up for Shadow Publications and getting ready for a move.
We're moving?
The show is
Tell me we're going to Idaho.
The show is going to be moving to another distributor very soon. So there's just business reasons for that and other reasons too. So there's going to be a period of adjustment. I hope you all are ready for it because I have no idea how crazy it's going to get. So we'll just see.
I'm sure everything will go just fine based on the last 2 days.
However, I did move our entire archive up to episode, I think 503 or something like that, into the Internet Archive. You don't even want to know how many gigs that was. So if you go to the Internet Archive and you search for Dead Robot Society, you should find all 500 whatever episodes there.
Damn, boy.
Yeah. So we can ultimately get them off our systems, and we'll just link to that. That'll be that.
That works.
And then we can have the viewers, if they want to go add metadata about who hosted the show or what the show was about, they're free to go in there and put the metadata in there if they like.
You realize with our particular fans, they're going to go in and they're going to put in things about possum scrotums the entire way from beginning to end.
I would hope they don't, because I didn't show up in this mess till the 200s, 180s, 200s.
Oh, I didn't say that it actually made sense.
Yeah.
They could do it, though.
Yeah, but I wouldn't do that. I would really like somebody to go through, and I just do not have time for it. I would really like somebody to go through and pull out the episodes that had Justin and PG in them. Get that list together and maybe go add that metadata at least. Because I just have never been through that. So if you want to do the DRS a big favor, you want to honor the history and crazy that's been there since the beginning of time, help us out. Go to Internet Archive and go search for it. And if you can't find it, email me. So we'll leave it at that. What the hell else have you been up to?
I've been writing and doing stuff. Since last week, I finished up the second short story that I was going to work on, got it off before the deadline. And I've now written 3 chapters into the next Empire novel. So I'm happy.
Awesome.
I'm trying out a new process. I'm recording with the digital recorder, bringing it back inside, transcribing it, giving it one pass to clean up the transcription errors. And then the next morning I go through it again and add the stuff that I would want to add to it. And once I build up a few more chapters, I'm going to start posting them on my Patreon starting on Monday.
Yummy.
Try to hit a chapter a day. I just want to build up a little backlog.
Gotcha. Okay.
Of course, today's days like yesterday and today, where we've got a couple of hours of showtime, do tend to mess that up.
Welcome to my world.
Mm-hmm. But I'm still going to be staying. I'm still staying after we record this. I'm going to be in this evening to go ahead and do the cleanup that I need to do. So I'll be ready to do my normal process in the morning.
Awesome. Parfait.
We'll see if this works out going all the way through the novel. I think that I will be happy sticking with this process for a while because I'm enjoying it. I feel good about it. Once I'm done with the novel, I'll print it all out. I'll do a red line going through it and then send it off to the editor. I'll be done.
Yeah, I'm doing the red lines for content right now more than anything else. But I found some sentences where I'm like, the fuck is this?
That's what my second read is doing, is I'm finding all the sentences where I go, what the fuck was I saying there? I can make this a little cleaner here.
Okay, past self. Yeah, I don't know what headspace you were in, but no. What's the old saying? Write drunk, edit sober.
I think you may have that backward.
No, I don't.
just go ahead and write drunk and edit drunk.
I am not Hemingway. I have no desire to be Hemingway. No, thank you.
No standing desk for you?
No. Well, I'd like a standing desk. Yes.
I don't think he actually used this. Or was it Twain that said that? Whoever said the standing desk was yanking somebody's chain.
I don't know.
I don't think that was real.
I don't know. I have no idea. But I do know we have an episode.
We do have an episode, and it's talking about a subject that all of us know very little about, and that's business. Since most of us are writers and we're artistic, and anytime we mention business, the right side of our brain suddenly has a seizure. Is that the right one?
Yeah, it melts
right
down.
brain?
Yes.
Yeah. We've actually found somebody that knows about business that can talk to us, and that is Joe Solari. So let's go ahead and welcome him onto the show, folks. Before we start, that reminds me, I did watch your newsletter just recently where you were talking about audience overlap.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's really interesting. Now, how do you stop it? Because you didn't actually say, oh, that's great. I've got this overlap. What the hell do I do
now? I'm all about just telling you how bad your rat infestation is. Like, all right.
Ad infestation. Okay, I want to hear the definition here. Please define.
So what I sent out, I was at a conference here in Chicago from Facebook, and I actually got one of these specialists, and they were talking about ad overlap and how it costs you so much money. And I'm like, holy shit, like what's ad overlap? And then she showed me how there's a tool in the ads in audiences where you can save your audiences, and then you can see how they overlap. And if it's anything more than 20%, you're basically competing against yourself. Which she probably got fired for telling me that. Right?
Ad infestation. I love that phrase.
You should work that into your novel with the trio. There needs to be some type of ad infestation.
Well, wasn't that like the thing in the Ready Player One movie? Is like they were trying to figure out how many ads until like they caused seizures.
Yeah. Basically,
one less than that.
Maybe. It's a horrible thing when you go to a website. It doesn't happen as much, but it still happens where you go to an occasional website and it tries to open up like 55 pop-ups, and you're just like, really, seriously? That's not helping you sell your content, buddy. Hopeless.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take control of the camera, and I'll
did
jump
we already
into
start this thing?
Are we already started? This only happens every single time.
I thought that was some good stuff there. I'd hate for us to lose it.
That is some good stuff. All right, then, folks, we've let you in the middle of this is in media res. We just let you right into this conversation, this episode, while we were starting it out. Let me take a moment to stop right here and introduce our guest today, Joe Solari. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Terry. Great to be here. I really appreciate the chance to come and talk with you guys. It's been hilarious so far, so I can only imagine where this is going to go now that we
nowhere good. It's going to go nowhere good. I could tell you that right now. Why don't you go ahead and take a moment to introduce yourself to the folks so that they'll know who they are listening to and what your background is.
Sure. So I'm a little bit of an anomaly in the author world. I came into it by happenstance. So how I learned about the whole independent publishing movement and what was going on was through my wife. She started publishing some nonfiction books. And like a good husband, while she was doing that, I pretended like I was paying attention, but I didn't. Until she had some issues with her KDP account. And I got behind the scenes and saw how much money she was making, and I suddenly got interested in this thing.
Oh, wait, there's cash in this. Hold on.
What? Honey, do you know how much money you just made? And of course she didn't, because things were 2 months behind. So like this was back in 2014. So, but anyhow, and at that time I had a business that I had started up with a partner in the oil and gas industry, spending a lot of time down in your neck of the woods in Houston.
Our condolences.
Yeah. You guys have a lock on humidity. Congratulations.
Thanks.
So after that business sold, I was kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I wrote a book called The Business Owner's Compendium, which I was certain was going to just revolutionize everything for every small business owner. And it didn't, of course. Like most nonfiction books, it kind of wasted away. But then there was a group of authors that started reading this book. And I was asked to start helping folks in the 20 books to 50K group. Craig Martell reached out to me and asked if I would help him with some of the business-related questions, because everything that I talk about is really focused on the entrepreneur, the small business owner, and practical operational stuff. So from there, where I've grown is in getting exposure to this indie community is figuring out ways that I can help authors be better business people, because I really believe that we're in this golden age of content creation. Things have been democratized. There's an opportunity for anybody, that was daydreaming all day in class. If they do some work, they can turn those daydreams into cold hard cash. How's that for an intro?
I think that's a great intro. I know that I know that as a writer, finding advice on getting business information, just even knowing just the very bare bones of what you should be doing is almost impossible. It is something that a few years ago, you just hear just whisperings in the corners. There's nothing, because we're artists. We may not think of ourselves as artists, but we're artists. And when we start talking business, half of our brains start to convulse.
Mm. Well, and there's an overarching thing, and just for small business owners, even if you were going to be, Terry decides he's going to start an insurance company. It's hard to understand how to run that business. There's you can go to school and get an MBA and learn how to, be a cog in the financial wheel. But that doesn't help you to the practical stuff of how do you protect your assets? How do you, set up things to make sure that the day-to-day is getting done, to make sure that it scales. And then you add in the layer of intellectual property. It becomes a whole nother thing that it's really just hard to find good information.
It is. Let's start at the basics here and see where the conversation takes us.
Sounds good.
Since most authors really don't understand even what it is to be business-like, as opposed to separating that from their writer selves, in the barest way, how would you describe separating the mindset of a creator from the mindset of a business operator?
So I think one of the things that I hope to help authors with is understanding that the business concepts and the tools and things like spreadsheets and setting up a company, these are not things to make your life harder. These are tools for you to make your life better. And what I mean by that is that the reason we have these things, some of it's for legal protection, a lot of it is to help you to manage your taxes. But if we go even more basic than that, why do we want to do that stuff? Is because we want to make it as efficient as possible for you to make money, because it's really hard. Every dollar that comes in, we want to make sure you hold on to as much of that as possible, right? So it's funny because with authors, they'll spend hours trying to learn how to do some kung fu with Facebook ads and learn all this esoteric stuff, but then they won't take the time to learn how to do some basic business things that are going to save them taxes, right? Did that kind of answer your question?
It did. It's a good place to start.
Yeah.
I came into this with a little bit of a bonus when I was doing this, because my wife, even though she's disabled now, she was at one time a financial analyst. So she is somebody that can do the taxes and knows more about figuring out these sort of things. When she started talking to me about deductions, my eyes rolled back into my head and I felt myself falling to the floor. And then I had the fear of you can't do that. The IRS, they're looking at you. So it's having someone to go, no, this is the way it works. We've got software that tells us, if we're being incautious here. So it's even just getting the mindset around, you can even have the options of doing these things, is hard for writers like me. It's taken me, the fear has taken me a while to get over.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me address that. I think first off, the IRS are human beings, right? So, and for any author that finds himself in it's actually a fortunate situation, right? That you've not put aside the money on the profits that you've made, right? So let's just say you find yourself in that situation where your books have taken off and you're just you haven't done any planning, and you haven't set aside the taxes on a quarterly basis. They are not going to come and take your house. They're not that ambitious, okay? What they're going to do, what you should do is you should pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, what can I do to get this situation resolved? And they will work out a plan, right? They'll be able to help you figure out what you can pay and when, and work through that. But then learn from that mistake and then put things in place so that you don't have that happen in the future. So if anybody that's listening or watching that finds himself in that situation, don't lose your mind. You can get it solved really easy by picking up the phone. You may wait 2 hours to talk to someone, but someone will talk to you and they'll resolve it. But understand this, that once your books start selling, you're already a little bit behind the 8 ball in the sense of thinking about your business, right? When you look at here, these are just general business statistics. When you look at any business, if the three of us started a business this year, the chances of it being in business in 5 years is about a 50-50 shot.
Unless you're a restaurant and you're doomed.
Yeah, then you got 90 days. So the reasons why the business might go out of business, they're varied. But the number one, the single biggest reason why businesses go out of business is they run out of cash. They don't have the money to get through whatever they're trying to get through. So if you can just think about that as an author, about how you manage your cash. And let's not forget about a big business and you got all this stuff, but we're just talking about your first launch, right? You might be able to write and knock out books 1 a month, but if you don't have the cash to get the covers made, get the editing done, then you're never going to succeed and get across what I call the launch trough, right? There's like, if you have a 3-book series that you're trying to put out and your premise of your business plan is well, the proceeds from book 1 are going to pay for the covers on book 2 and book 3, like, you're doomed. You didn't have the cash to make that plan work, right? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I've got 2 points to give back to that.
Yeah.
Is one, I ran through exactly what you're talking about with the IRS back in 2017. That year, I had been doing well and been full-time and doing it, hadn't set up any business at that point, was thinking, oh, I can wait till, I'm making a little bit more money. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth quarter of 2017, I teamed up with a much more popular author and wrote a series, and my income skyrocketed, and I didn't have enough money to pay the IRS the next year. And so we called them up and we set up a payment plan, and we're working our way through that. And so it was terrifying for like 10 minutes. And the wife said, just calm down. We'll handle this.
And you're fortunate that, Don has the experience, but for somebody that hasn't, and they find themselves in that situation, or worse, they reach out into, some group and get some, half truths about it, they'll lose their mind, right? They'll think that there's going to be, a SWAT team rolling up on their lawn. And it's not that way. Like, they want to get paid, and they understand this happens. So you can get through that. But you say you had another point you wanted to hit on.
I did. When I started writing, I had a day job to help fund my writing. So those first 3 books came out with me being able to support the cost of doing everything with it from my day job. Mm-hmm. I had that cushion when I began that I didn't have after book 3. So I'm lucky that I had that coverage overlap of income coming in. If I'd have been doing this when I started, one thing is my wife does my covers. So I'm lucky there. I don't have that particular expense, but editing, other things, those might've gotten me if I didn't have that initial coverage.
Yeah. And my big thing with it is, you just have to understand what those costs are. Yours are different from another author's. It changes genre to genre, right? But, if you're in something like epic fantasy, there's kind of this inherent brand promise of a trilogy, right? And right? Am I right?
No,
are you listening here, Paul?
I think
you're listening.
Right. Yeah, there's a reason I don't write it.
Yeah,
you write trilogies too. Don't even look at it. Don't even look at me like that.
Up. I have not written a trilogy yet.
But I haven't. You look at authors that are saying that space, and they put out book 1, and it's like, well, it gets a couple good reviews, and then there's some sales, but nothing happens. And it's like, well, that's because the readers in that genre, they're driving by and looking in the window, and they're seeing, well, the store's not fully stocked yet, right? And if your plan was to stock the store and the sales from the first book, like, that was a preventable failure, right? That gets back to why is your business failing? Is because it wasn't properly funded. You maybe needed $3,000 or $4,000 to get through that 3-book launch trough. Whatever that number is, you need to understand that and understand your situation. Because I know authors that are, they're really struggling to get this career started. Like they're getting up early in the morning and they've got families and they've got full-time jobs. And so they don't have a lot of shots at this. So make sure that when you take that first shot, it's done with a good plan and some cash put aside. And if that means you got to wait a little bit longer, it sucks, but like at least it'll be a more successful launch in my view.
There are plenty of people that have talked about going ahead and writing the first 3 books before they release one at all. And that's not necessarily a bad idea.
Well, so my the first 20 books that I spoke at was where there was a lot of talk of rapid release. I think it was Martha Carr had a panel on it, and like everybody in the halls were like, "I'm rapid releasing, and they're all running around, and I'm like, "Do you understand the kind of money that needs to be in place to do that?" Like,
they're running around going, "I'm excited about writing." And you're going, "Dear God, the financing."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I hate to be that, but it's like, if you're talking about a book a month, and then the one thing that every author has to just face if they're selling through any kind of channel is like you've got a 60-day cash lag, right? Yep. You can't get around that, right? So like if you put out, let's say you're paying your editor and your book cover person early, you could be 5-6 months before cash starts coming in.
That is absolutely correct.
Right. And that's not that's like a regular business problem. And that's the thing that I want authors to also understand. This isn't like this is part of just your business. It's like if you were selling anything and you're like bringing new sales guys in, like you hire the guys, you get them a computer, you get them a car. Well, he still hasn't gotten you a sale. Right? Like, and then some of those sales guys, like some books, suck and they don't deliver. Then that's even more, the lost cause. But knowing that you have that money to get through that launch trough in the beginning, like that's more important than worrying about if you're going to set up a LLC or an S corp or all of that stuff. And that's go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think that's where a lot of authors, when they speak to me the first time, get like surprised. Is they'll say, well, I'm getting started here. I want to be an independent publisher and I want to start a business. And I'm like, whoa, wait, no, there's no advantage to setting up this company that early. Like when you make more money, then yes, there's a lot of advantages to having a company. But in the beginning, as a startup, your money needs to go into the product, right? If you don't have a product, you don't have a business.
Just don't be like Terry. Don't wait a year past when you should have done something to go ahead and do something.
Oh, come on.
What's the backstory on this?
Well, the backstory on this is that I've been a full-time author for 4 years now, and I'm only just now setting up the business. So I'm a little bit later than I should have been.
Maybe I have a little insight into your circumstances. I would say that maybe a little bit, but not all that much, right? It's better to make sure that you've got some reliable cash flow, and depending on where you're setting up the company, the costs to do that, those are additional costs that you might not be ready to support. Now, in your case, you're at that point where, yes, you should be doing that, right? And there's a lot of good reasons for you to do it.
Yeah, and we've actually got our LLC approved and created, and as notification to all the people viewing this, we went ahead and we purchased into your BizOps course, and my wife is working her way through it as she can, and we're working on all the pieces, parts. We're still trying to get it all completed and done by the end of the year. We'll see. It depends on how much energy she has.
Yeah,
she's disabled, and it may be the first quarter when she actually gets everything all said and done, but it's in progress.
And I think that's a good point, is like whatever circumstances you're in right now, understanding where you need to go and slowly working there, that's great. Like, and the other thing that, like, especially with taxes, and everything's a year behind, right? It's like once you finally get everything set up, it's like you're not going to see the impact for like another 12 months tax-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it helps to be looking a little bit ahead of time to say, okay, well, I'm at that point to do this. Either way, every author is going to have a year where they're transitioning from being a sole proprietor to setting up their company. And, it's just a natural progression that any small business makes. And it's pretty easy to work through on your tax return.
One of the things that I'd heard early on, I got a lot of my business knowledge of what's going on with writing from Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush, because they've been blogging about this forever. I've been to a couple of their workshops in person as much as like 2011 is when I went to the first one. So it's been a while. And one of the things that he told me that I'd like to run past you and see what you think about it is, he said that's a time to set up your business. If you're owing the government taxes, it's time to set up your business.
I think you're right.
It's a very simplistic statement. I just wonder, is it true?
Well,
depends on how much you owe.
Yeah, I think that's a qualifier, right? Because the minute you have $400 worth of royalties on Amazon, Amazon's going to report that on a 1099.
Those bastards,
right? And that's because they don't want to show that as income; they want to show it as an expense. And so, as soon as you do that, you got to pay taxes. And
I think that what he was referring to is when your tax debt outflows over your deductions, where you actually have to cut the money. You got to write them a check, I think is what he meant.
Yeah. So, and it really depends on who you talk to. I think that, so understand this, that the original purpose of a company was to limit liability. It wasn't for all the kind of tax woo-shoo that we do now, right? Initially, it was, a limited liability company was to say, okay, this thing is set up. It's different than you. It's this entity. The assets that are in it and the liabilities that are in it are separate than yours, right? So if you were to go do business and not be able to pay your creditors, that company, they could come and take whatever assets were left in that to settle those liabilities, but they couldn't come after Terry's house or the stuff in the Tupperware, right? Like they could only stop at the business. If you're a sole proprietor and you run up debts, everything's in play, right? So in my view, the sooner you can do that piece, the better. But then the offset to that is that, you guys are in Texas, so you've got, 150, I think it is, for your LLC, and then you've got a franchise tax each year. So there's going to be some added costs. And then if you do things like get it set up as an S Corp, which is a different type of tax treatment, which is beneficial for artists, and you're not able to prepare your own taxes, you might have an added cost to that, right? So that gets to be where, like, again, those added costs are expenses, right? Or expensible. But once you have the company in place, there's some really important things it can do for you from a tax perspective, as well as for management of your intellectual property.
Yeah, I from our conversation, we spoke for a couple of hours when we were in Napa Valley in person, and we talked for an hour over video conference as well. And so I've had some more in-depth conversation with you than what we were available in your book. And we should mention that you actually have a very inexpensive and very eye-opening book that folks should be looking at. And we'll mention that at the end of the show. Okay. Both of us have read it, and I found it, a good recap of a lot of things that we'd already talked about. So that was a good thing. One of the things you mentioned here is companies and intellectual property. And you hear about agents and publishing companies going out of business and leaving authors in limbo.
Mm-hmm.
while we're busy protecting ourselves from liability, we're also putting ourselves at least a little bit at risk of having someone take away the intellectual property. Are we not? I mean, at least in a general sense. I don't want to be, doom and gloom here.
Well, so, I mean, you hit on a very important point. So here, and this is something I've been doing a ton of research on since Napa, because you guys opened my eyes to an interesting situation that's coming about with the independent publishing movement. And we can go unpack that if you want. But to your point, like, as an author, you're really not in a position to ever go bankrupt, right?
It's true. Your intellectual property is an asset.
It's an
if you
asset.
go bankrupt, it's going to go away.
Yeah, and when I say that company is going to protect you, if you're really doing well and you do something crazy and your creditors come after you, those are the assets they're going to want, right? And there's a good chance that corporate veil won't necessarily protect you there. Conversely, what's so crazy for me in looking at the author world, there isn't anyone that has the rights that authors have. To have a copyright that protects you for 70 years beyond your death is like, you can't get, if you invented the iPhone, you couldn't have that. If you invented the cure for cancer.
Take that, Steve Jobs!
And that's the underlying asset, that intellectual property that drives so much. Don't ever forget that those stories are what becomes affiliated with things like movies and merchandising. All of that stuff is tied to that copyright.
And one of the things I don't know whether or not we didn't have a chance to discuss this when we were in Napa, but it's something that I've heard from other locations is the valuation of intellectual property has been changing over the last 5 years. The way big traditional publishers are doing it, they're treating this intellectual property that they are licensing from traditional authors as an asset on their books. And they are valuing it really, really highly. We're talking millions of dollars highly for intellectual property for books that are well performing. And that's something that no one is aware of because it's not on anybody's radar. It's happening quietly behind the scenes. And if you die and you really hate someone, give them your intellectual property because you're going to bankrupt them.
Well, and one of the things that I discovered, a lawyer I'm working with shared with me, is that there's a right of rescinding that you have that's tied to your copyright.
35 years.
35 years, right? So no matter what dumbass deal you put yourself into, you always have the opportunity to get out of that, right? But then think about this, depending on when some of that copyright falls, the heirs of that copyright, so this could be, your kids or your cats, whatever, they decide at that 35-year point, they're going to pull that copyright out of your estate. Right? Like you have to think through that far down the road because the duration is going to be multi-generation.
For some people that are writing that are already older, I intend to be writing for many years, and basically I'll be dead before some of my 35-year mark would roll around. Admittedly, I'm not a traditionally published artist. I have all of my own rights, so that's not a big hit for me. But if you're licensing it to someone else for the life of the copyright, it is a big deal.
And it is. And it ties off to how things are valued. And I think the thing that, I keep talking about this golden age of content creation. I think that when you understand what's going on in the media industry, right, there's some mega trends that authors are going to be able to ride here. Right? So the whole population of the world is getting bigger, getting better educated, going to live longer, be healthier, and have more free time. Right? So they're going to want to be entertained. So how are they going to be entertained? Well, you look at a company like Disney. Right? Disney hasn't made anything unique, I would argue, since Walt died. Okay? What they have proven is they have a almost a monopoly. They're just unbelievable at taking content and regurgitating and reusing it and finding more and more rivers of cash, right? So they are prepared when they see something valuable to pay top dollar for it, right? You think about some of the deals they did with, people laughed at them when they paid $4 billion for Marvel.
I think that's paid off for them.
It paid off in a few movies, and I think I just heard that Avengers is going to be Endgame is going to be the number one grossing movie ever.
It's about 40 million back from Avatar.
Yeah. So, and it's got
that's like $2.7 trillion in box office receipts.
Jesus.
Think about this one. Toy Story 4 just came out. Right? Woody's 25 years old.
They're gonna have to get a new voice when what's his name dies.
Well,
Tom Hanks.
I haven't seen it, but I think Don Rickles is actually in the movie somehow. Like, even though
he is. I read something there. What they did for his lines is they went back through all of the stuff that he's ever said that they have audio for and picked and plucked things that were appropriate for him to say and stuck them in there. That's how they did it.
Think about that. Think about like how that changes the game, right? Like, Don Rickles' voice is an asset beyond the grave.
His likeness and yeah.
Can you imagine that? Paul's likeness might be worth something one day.
No. Let's not get into fantasy. We're talking business here.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing that and the other trend that's in this that I think is really interesting to watch is, so if you kind of paid attention to what Disney has done with the 20th Century Fox purchase and some of the things that they've been playing around with, a big part of that was they're getting control of Hulu and being able to have direct channels, right? So they're trying to disintermediate anybody between them and the customer. Does this sound a lot like independent publishing?
In a way, they're doing some interesting things because they're going to have Hulu and they're also going to have Disney Plus. So they're going to have two different streaming platforms. And I'm not really quite sure how they're going to split content up between them, but I'm sure they've got a plan.
I'm sure Hulu will be the adult channel.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and the other one that they've been fought by all the cable companies. They've been trying to do streaming. I think they're able to do it now, but was ESPN. Because once ESPN was debundled from cable, like, everybody was going to untether. Right? If you're a big sports fan, it's like, well, if I don't have my ESPN, what am I going to do? Like, I have to pay $180 a month, right? It's like, not anymore. You don't.
Nope.
Right?
Streaming. I mean, we cut the cord years and years ago.
Same here. But my point is that, and this is some of the stuff you were talking before, Paul, with other guests, is about like that relationship. Like, if as an author, if you can find an audience that wants to read what you write, and your audience loves to read it, and you love to write it, you're in a position to really build something great, right? And you can do it direct, and you can do it in a way that is independent of platforms, and it's about your brand and about your content. Now, maybe you'll find that it makes sense because you're writing romance that 80% of your revenues are going to come from KU, but that doesn't stop you from thinking about other ways to create other rivers of cash.
He's actually writing secretly as Chuck Tingle, so he's making lots of extra cash.
One of these days, you're going to get somebody to actually believe that.
I don't have to get anyone to believe it. Just me saying it makes people laugh, so that's good enough for me.
Well,
I've been monopolizing the questioning. Paul, throw something out.
Throw something out.
Come on, you can do it. You're on the spot now.
Well, I was reading your book today before the episode. The history of the company is rather funny, but it basically reminded me that I'm doing all this contract work now for two different firms on top of all the writing and all the other shit. And it's now time to basically get at least two of those things under something.
Sure.
Consulting Paul, the business.
And there's there's nothing wrong with you running all that stuff through the same company. There's no reason why you can't do that. Right? And so in my case, I've got an LLC. My wife and I are both partners in that, and we just run everything through that. So that's book royalties, course stuff, my consulting, her consulting. So don't feel that like you have to have all kinds of crazy organizational stuff. That's just having that one entity will provide that same protection. Now, if there was one part of your business that was like super risky, then you might want to break that out. If it's
Chuck
not.
Tingle.
Stop it.
How's that risky?
It's like if I start selling software licenses. Create software, start selling a lot of software licenses, that would be a completely different animal than say royalty or just consulting. Because really, when we're writers, like for instance, when we were talking about the term, most vendors have to wait 90 days to get paid. Sometimes 180. And as far as Amazon,
did you used to do work for GE?
Oil industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, oil industry. Thank you. Yeah, we'll pay you in a quarter. No, fuck you. You're going to pay me now.
Show me the money.
Yeah, if I'm working for you, I'm not waiting 3 months to get a goddamn paycheck. That's not happening. But that's more or less how all these services treat you. There are a few that pay monthly. And you're not behind at all. They pay you the same month, the same month you made the money. But those are pretty far. The 800-pound gorillas are not doing business that way.
Weirdly, Audible pays in 60 days, where Amazon pays in 90. I'm expecting Audible to change their payment at any point to go ahead and stretch it out longer.
I think that's because they're dealing with so many professional companies that they can't really afford to do that yet.
All right, I can buy that.
Because remember, they're basically doing business with the studios, by and large, for audiobooks. Those are the big gorillas. Blackstone Entertainment, etc. Yeah. If you're talking about the mainstream books, look at what's advertised. You're not going to find any indie stuff on the front.
No, that's certainly true.
Well, that's my point. They're doing business with the bigs, and I think they want to keep it that way.
Well, it didn't stop Amazon from being 90 days, and they did most of their stuff with the traditional people first.
Yes, but then they found out they could fuck the independents just as hard.
You are so rude.
I thought I was just being realistic.
Well,
I thought I was just thinking like a corporation.
Well, that's it, right? I mean, that if we're what's the main reason any business goes out of business is they run out of cash. So if I can hold on to the cash I owe you, it gives me a little longer to play, right?
Right.
So
exactly.
And you think about Amazon's scale up. People forget they've never made money selling anything.
No, they're just they're nothing more than a distribution network.
They make the vast majority of their money on their cloud services.
So I'm an Amazon shareholder, and I listen to all their earnings calls. 85% of their contribution margin comes from two things. Number one is what you said, AWS. And number two is advertising.
Yeah, I believe that.
Okay. Any money that they're making in the U.S. on retail sales, they're losing overseas trying to win those markets. They have never made money selling products. But what the asset that they own is they have, you guys are software guys, they have the only true working model of the U.S. consumer economy.
Yeah, that I buy. Think how valuable that is. Yeah, it's basically they have the same. They're at the same point that Walmart was at before online started.
Walmart is trying to elbow their way in, and I don't think they're going to make it into the online sphere.
I think they squeezed their vendors so hard the last 10 years that nobody wants to really do anything with them. They rather go with Amazon. The problem is now Amazon is squeezing the small businesses and vendors just as hard as Walmart was.
Well, I'm gonna differ with you there a little bit. Amazon is squeezing their vendors, but they're playing a juggling game. They're continually monitoring how much they're squeezing them, going, is this enough or is this getting close to too much? They're trying to find that that
they're trying to
happy
find
medium.
they're trying to find the perfect combination of lube and position
Exactly.
to allow you to, or so that it will be just unpleasant.
But
It will just be unpleasant instead of too unpleasant.
That's what Walmart failed at, is that they squeezed them too hard, whereas Amazon's trying to walk that fine line of making as much as they can without crossing that line. And eventually they're going to cross it whether they want to or not.
I think
but
it's
fun
they
to
already
watch.
did, because they canceled that small vendor program that they had without, I think it was only 35, 60 days worth of notice.
I don't even know what program that is.
It was something for manufacturing type vendors. They had that something in place. I can't remember what it was, but I remember seeing the brouhaha on the register that they basically terminated the program without really telling anybody what was going to happen.
Amazon tells nobody anything ever.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you can't keep doing that forever.
I bet they can.
I know. I bet
in the future, in my dystopian novel, Amazon will control the universe, and they will tell no one anything.
Yes, all I can think is Microsoft Part 2. Actually, no. Apple is becoming Microsoft Part 2, and Amazon is going to become Chrysler Part 2.
So, are you saying that Microsoft is the chippy underdog now?
No,
fighting the man.
They're fucking up everything.
Everybody's evil. You're just writing cyberpunk. Everybody's an evil corporation.
I have not said such a thing yet.
Anybody that knows you think it's true.
Well, I can say I'm going more and more back to Linux. So I'll leave it at that. Anyway, we completely derailed this conversation that's supposed to be about LLC.
It's about business, and we were talking about business, but we should probably bring it back to the business around writers. Yes.
Absolutely.
I guess my point is that if you look at those trends, it's eventually going to start happening in these other spheres, because it's what they do. It is what they do. Corporations answer to shareholders. Shareholders want extreme profit. Eventually, when something gets too expensive, or they find a hole in their pocketbook, maybe somebody else's cloud service takes off and starts competing with them for real, then they're going to squeeze from other departments. Just what they do.
Well, I think the most important one in that, especially with Amazon, for authors to understand, and I think a lot of them are feeling it right now, is that, and this has been telegraphed. I mean, these guys have been writing about it in their 10K and talking about it on earnings calls, is they're planning on making 5 times as much money in advertising as they did last year.
It's a pay to play sort of thing,
right?
To do this.
So like they've made it so it's really hard to make margin in retailing. And they're making more money off advertising and fulfillment of other people's stuff than they are of selling stuff, right? So how do we make some money? Well, AWS is clicking along and doing its thing. Now it gets to advertising. And so, like, I was talking about this in my newsletter months ago. It's like they're doing some really obvious things. Like they changed the default cost of a bid from 35 cents to 70 cents. Guess what? That's a super old pricing trick, right? That most people aren't going to even pay attention. And this lifts the floor for everybody, right?
It does. And as I've been running a couple of AMS ads for a little bit more than a year and a half now. So lazy me should be doing more with advertising, but I've had those 2 specific ones running. And I suddenly noticed like 4 or 5 months ago that they were getting nowhere near as many views or clicks. And I had to create new ones with higher amounts because I could look back over those ads and say, here's the history. I see when it happened.
Well, I mentioned my wife's book. So she writes in this fashion niche. She does well in it. It's not a huge thing, but like we were running ads for a long time and we had a bunch historically. I can turn them on and turn them off. And I do that because, sometimes I found that older ads, when they come back on, run well. Well, so I was doing that, and ads that I had like unbelievable ROI on, wasn't seeing it anymore. Oh, and I look, and it's like, well, what I was able to get for like maybe 9 months ago for 12 cents a click is now 65 cents a click.
Holy cow.
Right? So it's happening, right? And now there's certain spaces where I can you can go and see it. It's like, what the hell is somebody bidding $12.95 for this keyword because they're defending that keyword, right? That's what happened on Google, right? It's like if you're an ambulance chasing lawyer, some of those keywords, you're not thinking about what that keyword is worth on one transaction. You're thinking about it's going to bring in the case that you're going to make $20 million on, right? So you're prepared to pay $100 a click, right? That's where authors need to think about, like, okay, this game is changing significantly. Right? The other part of it that people aren't really thinking about, I mean, you've seen it on your sales page. They've gone to an experience where 50% of your sales page now is advertising.
It's definitely gotten bigger.
Right? And they're making room for people that can spend some serious money. Because think about this, as authors, we're like, we're going to run a couple $100 a month ads, and you could do well with that. I know authors, of course, that were doing $10,000 a month, really being successful. They can go into a place like Procter & Gamble, right, and talk to those guys that are running ads budgets that are tens of millions of dollars and give them results like they've never seen before because they own the bottom of the funnel.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they own it. So, if you're selling Dove soap and you're spending $1 million a year just on aspirational ads on whatever channel, you go throw $1 million onto advertising on soap with keywords, it's going to get you some serious results. But we're, as individuals, got to compete with that ad spend. That's what I think a lot of folks are forgetting.
I recently signed up, which for those folks that are listening to this now, it's already too late to sign up because it will have expired in a couple of days. I signed up for Mark Dawson's ads for author's course. I've been meaning to for a year. My main drive wasn't to get more people to buy my books. My main drive is going to be get people to know I exist at all and maybe be interested enough to go look at my mailing list. If they like my books, to sign up and get notifications. The mailing list is my bread and butter. It's something I control. When I publish a book, I can send a note out to people that want to know that I'm sending a notice out. So if I could figure out a way to transition those ads into people that are interested in what I write, that want to be notified by me, not by Amazon, that's why I bought that course, because I think it's going to help me do that.
I completely agree. And I think that is the attitude you have to take as an author. If you're going to build this enduring brand around your storytelling, you have to build this audience, right? Whatever it is that you're going to, like, one thing that I've been proven by meeting different authors is I might think you're not a good author. I might think what you write is crap, but there's an audience out there that's reading it and can make you a full-time living. So don't take Solari's opinion about what you write as anything. If you're prepared to dive into that, whatever that niche is, and you do it well, you can build an audience that you can move off, in some respects, off of those platforms. And it's with your mailing list.
Personal taste is exactly that. It's a personal sort of thing. There are authors that just are making buckets of money writing that I read their stuff and I go, how is this even possible? Yet there's an audience and they found it. And that's why they're making buckets of money. Yeah.
And that's awesome. I think that's great that we're at that point. That's what I'm talking about, that golden age. It's like, you're like, who's going to read that stuff? Enough people to make that guy $1 million a year. So just shut up.
Chuck Tingle.
Right?
Okay. And I wasn't saying that Chuck Tingle is terrible. I've never actually read Chuck Tingle, so I don't know if he's terrible or great. He's probably great because he sounds like, from his titles, that he's awesome.
Yeah, at some point we should read a Chuck Tingle book and do a review.
Oh, no, we should not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, we should. It should be Patreon only, but we should do it.
Holy cow.
We should do it. I think it'd be awesome. We could read
the review in the review by the review. Is that what you're saying?
We could write. We could read some of our favorite phrases.
Oh Lord, no!
We have to do this. We have to do this.
Well, that's a horror for another day. We've mentioned in passing a couple of times taxes and how we can do that. We've mentioned deductions. These words have flown by everybody. Do you have any generic general low-level type advice for people to at least start thinking about deductions and how that can funnel into their lives, their taxes and everything else? Because most people, they just go, I can't deduct anything. The IRS, they're going to kill me. Yeah. They'll send a hit team to my house.
So the number one reason why most authors pay too much in taxes is because they don't deduct their expenses. It's that simple. Like, Amazon's going to report your income. You can't stop that from happening, right? But where authors fall down is like they don't record the cost of the book covers, conferences they go to, courses they're paying for, their internet, portions of their phone, portions of their car. There's
the chair you're sitting in, the desk.
Yeah. So let me talk on some of those things. And I've got a specific philosophy around taxes. So here's the thing. There's like 80,000 pages of tax code. It only gets bigger. And like, it's the rule book to play by. What we have to understand is your strategy, okay? Because your strategy is different than my strategy. If I've got kids that I'm trying to put through college, and you're trying to buy a big house, those are very different strategies, right? For example, let's use the example of a house. If you're an author, if you want to, as an author, you can live pretty large on what you make, because a lot of what you do can be expensed, right? So you could travel all over the world, right? And a lot of that can be expensed. You can expense the hotel rooms and the travel. And so you could go on and run a lot of your essential living expenses through the business, because you're researching, you're developing your books. It's all going to end up in your books, right? Now you come home and you're like, Joe, I'm tired of traveling. I just want to buy a big house. But, well, sorry, you can't. Nobody's going to give you a loan. Why is that? I make all this money. Yeah, but you didn't show it as profit. You burnt it all up in expenses, right? So you had this benefit of living large. Now you want to buy a large asset. In today's world, to buy a large asset, you need to show income on a W-2 that a loan officer can look at and tick his boxes to qualify for the loan. So if you say, no, I really want to buy a house, then we say, okay, for the next 18 months, we're going to be showing a lot of income as salary, and you're going to pay those taxes, right? So that you can walk into any dolt that's sitting behind a desk in a mortgage company and get your loan approved. So that gets to kind of the hard part of, like, the easy part is a lot of it's expense, but like the other thing you really got to think about as an author is what you're trying to do to create the wealth you're going to create with your intellectual property. You want to buy a house, you want to travel, think about those things. Then somebody like me or CPA can help you like really pinpoint what is expensive, what isn't. So I know that was a big tangent, but did that help?
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely something that's unique for each and every person, because our goals are going to be different no matter who you are. As an aside, there was something we had talked when we spoke online about a company doing health insurance, which that didn't work out so well. But just recently, like in the last week and a half, there's been news that health spending accounts are going to be opened back up to businesses again starting January 1st. So that gives me something new to keep an eye on as the business comes around, to see whether that's going to be something that applies to my situation, which is unique from everybody else's. Yeah.
And so let's talk about healthcare, because as a small business owner, this is going to be your single biggest expense. It's this verges on getting political with me. You've heard my rant before. This is hampering small business, right? Because I know people that are not going off and doing what they want to do and what they love to do and what they are geniuses at doing, because they have to stay at their day job to have adequate insurance. Now, as a small business owner, depending on how much money you're making, you can get insurance from the marketplace, and you can get it subsidized. Okay. Based on the income level that you're at.
Unless you're Terry and you make too much money and you got to buy your own.
Now, but here's the thing is no matter what, it's always kind of the same relative expense to whatever you're making, right? So like when you're at the level where the tax credit gets you to $200 a month, you're not making that much money. But as you scale up, you lose that tax credit. Right. And if you have a health issue with yourself or a spouse or a kid, those costs are astronomical, right? So there's ways where you can do things, and it's something you and I haven't talked about, but you can, there's companies that will do, basically like they run your payroll for you and you can use their health plan, right? And there's authors that do that. The issue is you're paying the full boat on the healthcare, right? So if you have circumstances in a family, you could be paying $3,000 a month for just healthcare, and it's good, but it's not great, right?
I could tell you now, me personally, just me, $1,100 to $1,200 a month. That's what I pay in healthcare every single blasted month.
Yeah. So you think about that and the impact that has on a business, right? And I know this is not just an author thing. When I was running a company, we had 35 employees. After our payroll, the next biggest expense was healthcare. And my employees weren't happy with the healthcare they had because we always had to continue to, increase their deduction or what their copay was. And all we were trying to do as the business owner was like not get raped by the insurance company who like would come in and be like, this is gonna be a great year. It's only going up 16%. Like only 16%. I wish I could do that to my customers, but I can't. So that comes out of the profits of this business. So you got me ranting. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We've went down our own little ranting spirit every time. This is nothing unusual for this show. Don't worry about it.
I mean, he's absolutely right. Before the HCA came around, I couldn't afford insurance because nobody would insure a bipolar person for less than $1,200 a month, and that was just for catastrophic $10,000 deductible insurance.
Right. Just crazy stuff.
And you're just completely fucked. There's just nothing you can do. And so you have to gamble. And if you lose big. Right.
And then the other part of it is if you are in, the HCA and you're using that health, that marketplace, there's all kinds of gyrations in the computer and stuff. And then like just the lost time as a business owner trying to deal with your own insurance. You can lose weeks. Like, okay, well, they just kicked me out of it for whatever reason because you didn't tick a box or whatever. And I get on the phone and you're spending hours with them. All that stuff that gets to this whole thing of mine where that's lost productivity in our economy, right? Like we know for a fact that small business owners employ more people than anybody else. They account for more of the businesses, right? And 68% of the companies that are set up, we're not even talking about sole proprietors, just companies that are in the census, 68% of them are earning $500,000 or less. So that's supporting either one person or one family. And those are the guys that are getting screwed with this deal.
Yep.
Right? So, and that, as entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, like, when you're talking to the HCA, you're not writing words and you're not making donuts. You got me again.
Look at you. You dragged us down, Paul. You've made us all depressed.
Well,
now.
you warned everybody at the very beginning, so this shouldn't be a shock.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a shock.
There's just
go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
I was just gonna say there's so many aspects of business that you can go down the rabbit hole, and if you let it go too far, you're going to spend more time than's productive on. It's always going to be a balance figuring out how can I make this job easier to free up what I have to do as opposed to what seems like it's worthwhile at the time, but it ends up costing you precious time that you can never get back.
Yeah. And I think when you go to any business and you start to like boil it down to its essence, like, I don't care what you do. Like, you can identify your customer, ask them what they want, and then give them as close as possible as you can. You will probably make a lot of money. Like, it doesn't matter, like writing a book. Like, people want you to write, you like to write something and you find that genre and you keep writing more of that, they're going to pay you money, right? Like, it's when we start to overthink it. And like, well, maybe they want a little more of this. It's like, no, they don't. They want just this, right? Like,
it's like, look at the romance market. It's not complicated, folks. Give the person what they want, and they will be half of the reading books in the universe. There you go.
Like, talk about an industry that got it so wrong, right? Like, traditional publishing had no idea of like the infinite amount of books that could be sold into a space, right? Like, they just missed it. And all the audience is saying is like, we just want more of this, more of this, more of this. Well, and if you start writing that stuff, and I think you may have in the past done that, you know that like it's humanly impossible to meet that demand.
It is humanly impossible.
You will break, right? So that's like, again, like getting the business basics. As an author, find that audience, the stuff you want to write. Again, you and I both agree that it doesn't have to be great. It has to meet that what you can write on a consistent basis and what readers want to read, and build that audience. Like, make a direct connection, right? That reader-writer relationship. I have this concept of this symbiotic organism. It's the reader and the writer. You got to have those two, right? Like, if you don't write, they don't read, it all falls apart.
I'm going to give everybody a key look into my secret of writing success. I've had a very successful run at being a writer, and it's going to be more successful as I do things to write more books. My secret, here it is, everything that you need to know. I write the books that I loved when I was reading them in the 80s when I was a young man, the 70s and the 80s. I want pulp adventure. I could not find it in today's writing. I was like, God, I just want something, just, the same sort of adventure, science fiction that I used to read. And then I started writing it, and the audience that felt like I do came to me and said, oh, thank God, there you are.
How about that? Like, and this is, I was at the Selmar Book Summit in Chicago, and Chris Fox was there speaking. He did a presentation. And he basically said the same thing. Is like when he wrote the Tech Mage series, he basically did a bunch of, market research, basically to validate that there was a bunch of guys out there just like him, right? Like, and he knew what that guy wanted to read, so he wrote it. And guess what? It resonated with a big audience.
Everybody, what they should be doing is writing for an audience of one, yourself. You write the books that you find enjoyable. If you're writing something you don't find enjoyable, that's work. I'm not sure you should be doing that. But if you write something that you enjoy, chances are you're not a very small niche audience. Probably you're a little bit bigger than that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think you still need to be looking at what your audience of one thinks is important.
Well, to that point, there's the next layer to that is that, okay, do some work, right? Because you're an independent publisher. So as the publisher component, you need to find more of you. That's the easiest thing you can do today, right? Like, Facebook makes that, almost puts it in your lap, right? Like, you got to pay for ads or whatever, but like, you can find that audience, right? I believe that playing field's been leveled. Right?
It is, and I intend to use my Facebook ads for exactly that. Even I'm running one Facebook ad because I only started running it a couple of months ago, just to start dipping my toe in the water. And I can already see that based off of the audience that is engaging with it, they're 55 plus, just like I'm almost 55. They're almost my age. So I am hitting the audience that I want to target mainly with those ads, that one single ad.
Yeah.
You laugh, Paul, but it's true.
No, the reason why I'm laughing is I was checking out my YouTube, my podcast statistics and looking at them. And the majority of my listeners and readers are between the ages of 24 and 35 and from 55 to 65.
That's weird. I wonder why there's a gap in the middle.
I don't know. It's bizarre. Really bizarre. So yeah, I understand how the demographic stuff can sort of help where you're going, see who's reading your stuff.
So basically what you're saying is that the ones that are missing out on you are the millennials.
No, because
remember, millennials are older than you think they are.
Yeah, they are older than I think they are. But I think that fits in the 24 to 35 group.
I don't know. I think the millennials are actually outside the 35 group.
No.
I think they're in the 35 to 45 group now. They're older than you think they are.
Oh, God. Anyway, regardless, that's what I see. I don't get that information on the Black or Derelicts, so I have no freaking idea what the demographics are there. But that's what I know from my own stuff.
It's something that if you can get insight into what you're doing and who's interested in it, you can use that information to then turn around and improve your targeting of that. It's like I intend to use my Facebook ads to build my mailing list. I'm going to be able to find people and appeal to them. If I'm true to what I write in my marketing, then they are going to come to the place they want to be, which is my mailing list.
Yeah. And I'm leveraging my podcast and my website and all the other stuff. And that's basically what my advertising is at this point.
And that's one of the things I wanted to say with this is don't lie to your audience. Don't let them think they're going one place when it's really something else. If you're trying to sugarcoat what you are, who you are, what you're writing, then that's going to bite you because they're going to figure it out. Readers are smarter than you think they are. That's the way that is.
You mean I shouldn't try and market Garaga's Children as romance?
I think you should not. I think that would be a very bad idea.
Kind of like marketing.
It's more like a bad romance, a really, really bad romance.
No, it's a romance with teeth.
But still a better romance than Twilight.
Ow!
Oh,
Ow! Shots fired.
Well, I know that you talked in the past about direct relationships, whether mailing list or subscription services. Think about this. This is again, Amazon's now getting into the advertising game. I'm going to bring this all full circle. Watch this. So that's really going to wake up Facebook, and Google's been scared for a while because nobody's really looking at how they're dealing with their advertising, right? So one of the big things that we're let down with Amazon is we can't get the conversion data, right? Because they're not our customers. We're just suppliers to them. They have that conversion data. Once you start moving customers over to a platform where you sell to them direct, you get conversion data, right? So you can see when they buy a book. And Facebook has this already set up where when you start having enough conversions, they can look at all of that data through the string of people coming to your site, through the pixel, going to the cart, making that conversion, look at those attributes of that people that convert and go find more of those, right? And use, this is what machine learning is all about. Artificial intelligence and machine learning isn't about trying to have cars drive and robots rule the world. It's about advertising. Right?
Bite your tongue. That's what it's all about.
It is. Right? That's what pays the bills, right? Google wouldn't be around if it wasn't for advertising. Facebook wouldn't be around if it wasn't for advertising. If you're not paying for something, you are the product.
So with something like advertising on Facebook, I know that you can put a Facebook pixel inside of your website and keep information about who goes through there. Can you do it through Facebook ads? I haven't got it. I obviously have not gone through the Facebook advertising course yet.
So I have a free book. It's actually, it's called Direct Sales Unleashed. And I talk about a couple things to do. Every author should do this before they scourge their mailing list. If you've got PayPal, okay, even if your book's going to be in KU, before it goes into KU, I'm getting a little off subject here, but we got to hit this one, right? Set up a buy button and get the link, okay? Get the cover of your book and pre-sell it to your mailing list before you put your book on Amazon.
That's evil. I like that.
That's evil, but it also has an impact on the initial velocity of your sales there. I'm not sure how that's going to affect your ranking, but that's an interesting idea.
So what's more important to you? What effect it might have on rank, or to find out who's on your list that wants to buy direct from you? Like if we're talking, that gets back to like that customer relationship. Let's find out, because there's going to be dudes on your list that like love your stuff, but they're just not going to buy from Amazon because they hate Amazon.
I have a lot of folks that are that way with the audiobooks too. A lot of folks.
And the beautiful thing about what authors have is what I just described, and it's in this book that I have, which is free. You can set it up so that if you have BookFunnel and you have PayPal, when they buy the book through the PayPal link in your newsletter, so you've just done a transaction in your newsletter, walk with me on this one. When you do load the book into BookFunnel, it's going to deliver it to them, just like it would a free book. There's webhooks and all that stuff that gets set up. It's pretty easy. You get paid in 2 working days, and your margins are screaming, right? They're in the 80s, because all you're going to get charged is, 32 cents plus 2.6% on PayPal?
Something like that.
Something like that, right? So it's almost like you get to give yourself an advance on your book. And if you start to do stuff like this, you change the philosophy of what your newsletter is about, because pre-orders are now in your newsletter. So it's another reason your engagement in your newsletter is going to go up, because people want to be on your newsletter to get your shit earlier. And you throw in an extra chapter.
Or some bonus material, whatever.
Yes. Yeah. So that's
think about,
right. So that's something you can do if you're just with PayPal and BookFunnel, which just about every author is got, right? If you start to do stuff with WooCommerce on your website with a WordPress site, there's linkage right to Facebook where you're exchanging data and they're seeing the customer journey, right? So you can start targeting, remarketing them when they abandon the cart, and you can do all the scary stuff that all the other retailers do that we can't as authors because we have intermediaries like Amazon or Apple. I know I got completely off the business stuff, but it's
that's okay. That's part of business. It's
all business.
Business is so large that if we talked about it for days on end, we'd still only scratch the surface of it.
Right. And my thing is, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying to anybody to walk away from the Amazon platform. Like, I'm not an Amazon hater. I believe that they do a lot of good for authors, right? They've leveled the playing field in a lot of ways. But as a business person, if you're building an enduring brand, right? Like, what's of value? A business that knows a lot about their customer and has direct sales, or a guy that has I got a bunch of sales, but I don't know anything about those customers because they're on Amazon, right? What a company like Disney is going to pay for is that it's the data too, right? Like, they want to know, you got these kind of customers. These kind of customers also like princesses. We honestly know something about princesses.
Yeah, I know that they do. I would be surprised if at some point in the future, Amazon does not have something like Facebook currently has, where they can have a way of targeting other people for the ads specifically that are more like your audience, if they're not already doing it behind the scenes. I'm not sure exactly how this works with the automated ads that they run. I know if you choose your own keywords, you're letting yourself in for whatever you're going to get. But they've got an automatic version. Who knows what that does in the black box?
Yeah, and they'll have to get a lot better at their ad platform, right, to be competitive, because sorry about the dog. Everybody's game's just lifting, right? So like, Google's going to get better, Facebook's going to get better, Amazon's going to get, because they're competing for those advertising dollars. The losers are traditional advertisers, TV, those guys, right? So, I'll be amazed at what they come out with. But the other thing is that if they don't take care of that organism, that reader-writer organism, it's going to go find somewhere else to live that it thrives better.
That's the, I mean, when John Moreau and I were talking about it, it's not abandon, it is diversify and protect.
Yes. Yeah.
Just be ready to be nimble in case something does happen. And
Yeah,
it like for instance, we have no idea what is going to be effect of the regulations that may be coming down on the high tech companies,
if any.
if any. But the rumblings are certainly there on both sides of the aisle. So we have no idea what could happen in the next year or two.
It's awkward when you're. I'm going to throw out one point here before I cut back to you. It's in my case, I'm a lot like romance authors. I make 2/3 of my income off Kindle Unlimited. So when we were talking ranking being important, getting higher in the ranking charts actually does have a direct impact on people saying, "Oh, there's this book in Kindle Unlimited I want to go read." And I'm not saying no to what your idea is. I'm going to have to think about it long and hard how I can combine those ideas. But if change comes, I'm vulnerable. And I know I'm vulnerable. But it's hard when you're making 2/3 of your money doing one thing to change something that could have such a drastic effect on the business, especially when it's your only source of income.
Yeah. And, I think that it's an important point to understand. When you think about that, you may have to take a risk and try it and see if it works and what happens, right? My position on it is, with clients that are romance writers, folks that are very heavy KU. KU is a different value proposition, right?
It's a different audience in a lot of ways.
And now there's some folks in KU that will love you enough that they will come over and buy direct because they love you and they want to support you. A lot of them won't. There's customers that aren't going to want to buy direct from you just because they're too lazy to reach in their pocket and pull a credit card out, right? You just have to deal with that. Those are customers. You're those people, right? Like,
absolutely,
right? So, it's just like, well, I'm not going to buy it from you direct because it's too hard. I'd rather just go on the Amazon and they got my credit card information and poof, it appears on my phone. Okay, that's good. Like that's something you're going to have to deal with. But
Amazon Pay.
There you go. That's a nice way around it. But one of the things I've discovered, I'm kind of looking around on my desk here for something. So I went, part of what I have a fiction pen name, and part of what I do with that fiction pen name is I'm testing out ideas. It's kind of like a crash test dummy for some of the things I come up with. And so I did an experiment where I've got a small audience. I've got maybe 3,000 names on a list. And I write
that's my mailing list. Thanks for list shaming me, buddy.
My list now seems like I shouldn't even bother.
So I did some experiments. I did some direct selling. Then the thing I wanted to prove out is like, if I don't have the money to go get an audiobook done, can I go raise the money? So I went and did a Kickstarter. I raised $5,000 to get my audiobook done. Okay. One of the things I did, I wish I could find it.
Just the leather-bound book you had as a reward level?
Yeah. $500. $500. 3 people paid me.
Well, that's an interesting point, and I'm going to throw one at you, another example of that. Just last night, I found an author that I love that traditionally publishes. He actually publishes through Bain. He had to stop a series because it wasn't, working out for them. But he went ahead and kickstarted the 4th book in that series. And not only did I put down the money for the Kickstarter for the ebook version, but he's doing challenge coins. I was like, oh, who doesn't love challenge coins? So I gave him a $65 pledge because I wanted to get those three challenge coins.
Yep. Now, and the other part of that, my story is that 2 of the people that bought $500 leather-bound books were not on my list.
That is weird.
Right? So there are people that are book collectors that are looking for those kind of books. So the moral of the story is that as authors, you have to start exploring, the different rivers of cash, like the source flow to your massive river of cash, and like what are some of the points that you can sell, right? Like you don't know. There could be somebody on your mailing list that has a private jet. All right. So what they're prepared to pay for Terry Mixon content is way outside of your realm of thinking.
It could very well be. With my main series, I'm not so afraid of doing experiments like that because I'm going to get enough traction on that particular series when I put the next book out that it's going to do well enough. I may go ahead and try something like doing a pre-list sale to the mailing list and see what happens with one of the mainline books. The other ones where they're a little more chancy financially, I might be a bit more hesitant for that.
And that's it. You just got to give it a shot, right? I've talked to a lot of authors about this, and there's been some that are like, I'm prepared to give it a shot. Others that are just they're too afraid. And
change is hard.
Well, and I think what's really scary about that is, what do you think change is going to be like when something happens with Amazon? Right? Like if you're in KU and it drops, what happens? Like
it's like when KU changed the way that they were doing it from
erotic
the books.
Apocalypse.
Well, from favoring units to going to pages. There were a lot of people gaming the system that were writing short things and getting a lot of money out of that. And then suddenly it's by the page and they've basically been cut off at the knees. Their income that they had, it's gone.
And YouTube just went through a big thing with people getting deplatformed. There's a lot of that it's a huge impact. I had it with a traditional business where we had a very close relationship with a company. It was 80% of our business, and a tight relationship. And oh, by the way, they got bought, and the company that bought them had a division that did exactly what we did. So like it didn't matter how good our relationships were. We were out. So it takes years to recover from those kind of things.
The only constant is change.
Yeah. So the more that you can kind of prepare yourself and try these things out, and Paul, you're talking about what might happen with some of these platforms, and my observation is whenever the government gets after these guys, they just muddle them down and take them completely off their game. What ends up taking them out isn't the government or the monopoly deal. It's some other competitor comes in that no one ever thought about, right?
Yeah.
It would have to be somebody that nobody ever thought about taking on Facebook or Amazon because they've gotten so large that it's hard to scale up to try to even fight them, to try to compete with them.
Yes, but they're losing younger people by the day. They're going to Instagram. They're going to these other
Facebook
places.
owns Instagram.
I understand that, but Facebook itself, they have left.
That's one of the reasons Facebook bought Instagram is because they wanted that audience as well. It's interesting to watch them maneuver for audience share.
Oh, I think Instagram is also going to start having problems. There'll be something else that comes along and disrupts it as well.
Well, the three of us are of an age we can remember a time when like it was a big deal that Internet Explorer was around and how it was monopolizing the market. Right? Like, who even uses that anymore?
Not even Microsoft.
Right. Like, but like billions of dollars went to defending that thing, and like it was a big deal. And it's like the game completely changed, right? And like, and a lot of levels because like they weren't even thinking about what was going to happen with mobile.
Yep, that's true.
It's just I always think it's gonna like it's never the dude that you think it's gonna be, right? Like I live in Chicago. For over 100 years, there was only one retailer you talked about. It was Sears, right? Yeah. Like they dominated the landscape. They made
literally they have a building.
Yeah, right. Like and like they also created this whole infrastructure around here of catalog companies. Like you think about Grainger and McMaster Carr, and all those are all derivatives of the Sears catalog infrastructure in Chicago. And they're going to go the way of the dodo.
And it didn't really take all that long for that to happen.
And people say, oh, it's Amazon. That wasn't really Amazon. It was when it was bought by private equity or a hedge fund. That's what messed it up.
Yes, that's where good companies go to die. It's with vulture capitalists or hedge fund managers.
Barnes & Noble just got bought by an equity firm.
Yeah, we'll see how that turns out.
We'll see how that turns out.
we'll see how that turns.
They are the same. To their credit, they're the ones that turn Waterstones around in the UK, but this isn't the UK, so we'll see how that works out for them.
Well, and understanding something like that, like when a company is bought by a hedge fund, right? Like the owners are not interested in that business as what's in it. They're interested in that as a product. The business is a product, right? They're going to do something with that's going to make whatever money they put into it turn into a lot more money. That's their job. That's what they're required to do. And we can't be like, oh, those bad guys, because all of our money is in their pockets, right? When everyone's like, all those hedge funds, where's that money coming from? It's not from just the 1%. Like, it's also from CalPERS, the largest pension fund in California. It's putting their money in there too. So we're all a little bit complicit in that play.
Well, it's true. It's absolutely true. And I'm not condemning them for what they're doing. I'm just saying that traditional publishing is going to have a hard time if Barnes & Noble goes out of business.
Yeah, they are. They're going to have a horrendous time. But what's really killing them is guys like you. You're the guys that are eating their lunch, because they're fiddle farting around about what we're going to do in this, science fiction marketplace, and and they're having meetings and guys with PowerPoint presentations. And in the meantime, you're writing books and throwing them out there and pleasing customers.
Without a 24-person focus group.
Right. Like the focus group was you. It's like, oh, I think it'd be cool if a robot did this.
You basically summarized Paul's last 3 books with that one sentence.
Oh, wow. To have your life's work distilled into that statement. I am now very depressed. I am now
The sad part is it's true.
Fuck you. Asshole. Anyway, that notwithstanding. Gentlemen, we have talked for a long ass time.
We have. It's been so much fun that we actually went past the hour mark. So
sorry about that.
That's okay. We don't mind.
Means we have to have you back on again at some point.
I'm always around.
Before we cut off here, I'd like you to have a chance to go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you and some of the courses that you have that might prove educational to them.
Sure. So I've got a website called Indie Author Alchemy, all one word. And on that site, there's 2 courses that I have for folks. One's called Sole Proprietor Simplified. That's designed for folks that are early stage authors. They're not ready to set up their company, but they just want to have the organizational help and understand how to properly fill out their Schedule C, understand that list of expenses, all that fun stuff, so that they don't pay too much in taxes. The next one is the BizOps Bootcamp, which you mentioned, Terry, which is focused for the next level up of folks that are ready to set up their company. And the first third of that course is really the nuts and bolts of setting up the company in whatever state that you're in. Once you get done with that, you only have to take that medicine once. The rest is really about organizing and running that business, getting the documents and organizational stuff in place. And that, most authors kind of fall into that space where, they still have to be the CEO and the creative guy. So we help you do that, and we're there with a lot of hand-holding. I have, you have a group, right?
A Facebook group?
A Facebook group?
Yeah. Yes, I just approved you membership to it just yesterday or today.
Today, yeah. So I'd be happy for people that are in your Facebook group, like we could set up a link for them to do like one-on-ones like you and I did, Terry. I'm more than happy with any author. I don't care where you're at in your career, whether you just start write a book, just to give you some time to talk one-on-one.
What we can do is once this episode goes live, we post the link to it inside the group as well as outside. And we'll go ahead and start a thread in there and talk about the course and let you tell them about it inside that particular thread. Yeah. And they're more than welcome to do that. I have no stress with that.
Cool. And just to answer questions, because it's something I do at, conferences I go to, because so much of the stuff is unique situations, right? Understanding people if they've got special needs in the family that we need to address or whatever it is. There's, like I said, there's 80,000 pages of tax code. How we play this game needs to be looked at with your specific situation.
A lot of the thing it's like my trip to Napa where we had the chance to sit down and talk. You don't know what you don't know until you don't know you know it. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It's the truth. So you sit down and talk with somebody, you don't even know that you're ignorant about a subject. You really don't know anything. And so it's a place to start.
I'd say the other thing as far as resources, there's the Should I Incorporate book, which is a great one because I think it helps authors understand, when as well as how the incorporation process. And then that Direct Sales Unleashed, that book's free. And that one gives you kind of some tips on how to, start exploring the direct sales process. Because for me, it's kind of a gimmicky thing in the sense of like, yeah, I'm going to show you how you can sell some stuff, but really it's more about building that customer nurturing system that helps you segment your customers and understand that these guys will pay more money for some things from you and others won't, and where they want to buy from you. I think that's kind of where things are going for authors.
I think that that's a good laying out of the places they can find you. And folks, if you have these thoughts where you don't know where you are with business, go get that book. It's $2.99. Seriously, well worth your time to know the basics of it, even if you're not ready for it yet.
Well, thanks, Jerry. It's been great to be on.
Joe, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. Let me go ahead and take us out of the show. Folks, if you would like to send us a note about this show and ask your own questions that we have no answers to, and because we are not experts, we will not answer your business questions because we're smarter than that, send us a note at show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can find Paul on Twitter at Paul_E_Cooley. You can find us on Facebook at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group. Our audio is available for you at podhoster.com. You can find us on YouTube at YouTube/DRS podcast. And of course, if you are on Patreon and support us, or you want to be, you can find us at patreon.com/DRS podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get exclusive content, live shows, and that sort of thing, which, speaking of, there's going to be a live show this weekend. We'll mention it we will mention it inside the intro that we attached to the episode in front of this, because obviously this one is too late. Paul always forgets to send out the notes. One of the benefits that you get if you support us on Patreon at $10 or more a month is you get your name read on the show. Paul, who are our $10 supporters?
Our $10 supporters are Andrew Smallwood, J.D. Barker, Isabel Cushy, Chris Winder, Nathan Cosby, Aaron Meeser, Jesse Tacos Our Life Orca. Yeah, I can see that. Andre Conde Moraes, Veronica Jaguar, still not a possum. Jack F. Erickson, Tracy Bodine, DJ Chamberlain, J.R. Handley, Cheryl It's Sure, as in Shirtrell rhymes with jelly, not Cheryl. Okay.
Sure.
Drew, try not to Paul Cooley this story, Bernardi. Ow.
Too late for that.
Rick being forced to burn vacation time. Oh, dude, that sucks. But right words. All right. That's it. Thank you very much for supporting us. We appreciate it very much.
We very much deeply so. And again, Joe, pleasure having you on, and we will invite you back at some point in the future to talk more.
All right. Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Paul.
And folks, with that, we are out of here, and we will see you, if you're a patron, this weekend. And if not, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.